Okay, so today we're going to get into the idea of plein air drawing and in a gestural way, which is what the title says. And for this, it means drawing in nature and looking at subject matter. So right here, as I begin drawing, I'm actually just blocking in very general themes. And I apologize for the shadows that are coming through. That tends to happen as being further exaggerated with the way this camera is capturing the light. But what I'm doing right now is with my regular printer paper, I'm just drawing some how I see a road or kind of a line of trees. I'm giving it a path right now. So I just want to draw in the basics so I get a good composition. My horizon line is shifted up towards the top so that I often think that pushing the horizon up above the middle line or below can make composition a little more dramatic. Also, picking a subject which is your dominant idea, your dominant thing that interests you most, off center can help you out. You'll see what I selected in just a second. So right around there, I'm trying to figure out these hills that happen as I'm this part of the driveway where I live in Charlottesville. So now I'm going to start mapping in a tree. And similar to the blind contour project that we started as our very first project in the semester, I just want to block in the trunk and how the structure and architecture of the tree and the branches work from the bottom to the top. I just want to give myself a sense of how this tree is put together. So I see a rough trunk, and now I want to give myself a sense of how the leaves operate and where they visually map into the tree itself. So obviously it's going to fill in around these branches that I've set up, but beyond that, it's not going to be a lollipop tree. It's going to probably be very asymmetrical. Most trees are not symmetrical unless they've been very much hedged or groomed or things like that. So this one is not. I probably cut some branches off to make it easier mowing, but beyond that, it's a pretty natural tree. And what interested me most was the way the trunk comes out of the ground and just the way it kind of twists and turns and the leaves, and it's a very pretty tree. So now, as I am filling in some of the leaves, I want to come up with a gesture for the leaves that mimics what is actually occurring in nature right in front of me as I start a hard outline of this trunk. And the trunk is really in the shadow of the leaves because it's midday. And so the trunk will be probably almost black by the time I'm done with it. And some of these branches will show through as being almost black as well. But getting back to the idea of the leaves, and these leaves were very round. Wasn't your sort of teardrop leaf. It was a really just a sort of a round shape that I was able to, as you can see, do very quickly, but not the same scribble every time. Even though I would still say it's kind of a scribbling gesture, I'm making sure there's enough variety in the mark making that mimics what's in front of me in a way that I can convey the idea of gravity operating on the tree. So I'm also really looking a lot at the tree and how the leaves and the branches move out from the trunk. The leaves don't just move left to right like our arms do. They actually are full, 360 going around the trunk. So in front of, behind, and left and right is how the leaves fill in, but not always the same. And as we see in a day like today, and I don't think I've got a picture of my actual setting. I should have done that. On a day like today, I really think that it's important to stress where the light is hitting. So midday, the light is directly overhead. And so with that being said, the top part of the tree will be a lot lighter. And this trunk, as I'm shading right now, will be a little bit darker. But also the leaves that are closer to the bottom of the tree will be a lot darker. So my scribbles will be a heavier hand, but also there will probably be more of them just because they will show up being darker. And I'm also trying to make sure that I'm not doing the same mark over and over. I'm really trying to study how the tree is operating in space so that it looks natural. Again, this is a very quick drawing. I think this drawing overall took me about 30 minutes when all is said and done, and I'll speed it up just a little bit. I won't make you sit through me talking the whole time. But since this is my main sort of subject, although I do want to fill out the rest of this composition well, I wanted to take my time with this and really figure out what the overall form of this tree is like. And in doing that, I know that on the left side, it felt as though the leaves flop down a little bit more, and on the right side, it's tended to fill up towards really the top of the page. So as the light is hitting it, you'll notice that I'm starting to darken in things more and more, really trying to evaluate how the leaves are falling. The leaves will not always fall down. Sometimes they are being pushed upwards by the branches, so really trying to be someone who is observing well and trust what's in front of you. The answers are all there. So now I'm going to speed up this film a little bit, enough talk. And I'm trying to follow this path, this road that's behind it, and there's another tree behind this tree. And they're just showing up as these dark trunks because they're kind of in the shadows. And then here's a bit of a long grass line. So trying to make those marks mimic what's happening with the grasses. And since the side of them, they were showing a little bit darker. The tops might not even show up as anything. Filling more in with that light, which is not helping me out in describing this. But whatever mark you feel represents the object as well, then I think that's will be specific to that object. You shouldn't always do the same mark for everything you're doing, because you'll see in a second, hopefully when the light shows up a little more to our advantage. These are some taller trees, more fir type trees, evergreen type trees, and so they're really in the dark shadows. It was a bright day. Bright paper. That's another recommendation I'll have is if you are drawing outside, I would recommend to either wear sunglasses or to be in the shade. And I was, for the most part, in the shade here, believe it or not, because looking down at white paper can be an assault on your eyes, and you'll start to see stars. You go from the bright white page into a different room or different space. So give yourself a little bit of an opportunity to give your eyes a break. I'm sure you're looking at computer screens the whole time. Okay, to the right, I'm going to try to put in a fence line. Trust me, it's there. It's a three-board fence, and it goes behind these big, thick trees. And as we get back in space, those lines that I initially set up for my road line, they are there so that the fence line can follow that contour. And this is probably what I'm doing right there. That's really the more literal landscape line, the horizon line. Just filling things. So if things show up to you as being totally in the shadows, totally black, I would draw them in as pretty black. So my number 2 pencil, I will have to carve it away, being very, very, very dark. So make sure that these objects do show up as black. What a reveal this will be. So here's some more side shrubbery as I'm getting a little more dabbled shadows. Let me get on my sheet. So here's another important note to recognize is that shadows underneath things like trees typically run horizontally. They are not going to be taking up a lot of vertical space, so I would draw your shadow beneath trees as being horizontal. And you'll see that in just a second, how I try to articulate that with the shadows underneath those big trees on the right, and how they move underneath the width of the span of the branches that are above. And now I'm just putting some grass strokes. Not all the grass strokes will be the same. Now the background, since it's further away, I'm going to give it less specificity. Those trees that are way, way, way in the distance. And may just show being as these sort of blobby shapes with some verticals that will represent the trunks. But they may also be a little bit darker. We're trying to find those shapes that are within, whether they're far away trees or whether they're close-up trees. Trying to find those spaces that represent shapes of either highlight or shadow. And that's what I'm trying to convey in this very quick drawing. And again, the best part about doing a drawing like this is these trees aren't going to come up to the drawing later on and say, hey, that doesn't look anything like me. Luckily, trees don't do that. So you can be a little bit off. You can be a little bit, have some exaggerated features of these trees. And I know that all my spacing is not totally correct here. I tried to get it pretty spot on. And as with most things, we want to try to fill out these rectangles, our printer paper sheets with a full idea of composition. So even though the tree was my main focal point, I do want to make it so that everything feels fully realized and I'm giving as much care to the tree as I am to some of these other areas, whether it's the grass in front, which might just be a couple blades here and there because it's just a bright light on the grass, or it could be the background, or it could be the shadow, just to make sure that I'm giving a sense of the time of day, which was midday, noonish. And so with that, very strong light today. And I would also try to pick a day where you are getting some of these exaggerated moments where the darks are very dark and the highlights can also give you some clues to what's going on and help you describe some of the form. So those were very, very dark. So I'm trying to fill them in as dark as this number 2 pencils will go. And that's a little dotted mark within the fence because the grass is a little bit longer. As I lean back, I'm going to try to finish out some areas so it doesn't feel incomplete. So some of these grass marks and shading will give that sense of a little more complete look. Oftentimes people ask me what happens with grass. You're not supposed to draw every blade of grass. As you get further and further away, grass will often run more horizontal. As you get closer to you might see some more specific grass marks which will run vertical. But never do the same thing always. I love that quote. So the grass should never be, you're not a printer, so let's not be a machine about this. Make the grass have some variety and really study how it is falling and moving in front of you. Is it always straight up and down, or do they kind of slant sideways? So here's the final drawing, and obviously I've taken this picture and so you can see the black and white, but you can see the scribbles in the trees and how as you move through it, it's very scribble based, but it's very quick, and hopefully you get a sense of seeing the absolute black, the absolute white, but it gives you a sense of the full image. So there you have it. Good luck. Try to find a space where you have some objects that hold your attention and give you something to work with. So that's my first example. I'm going to show you another one in just a bit. So good luck.